We're now going to talk about the law of expectations. This is law number 5. It's the second law of the activity chapters. And it is a powerful law because it's going to help you learn how to close a sale. It's going to help you learn how to assume the close more. But it begins with expectations. See, we generally don't get what we don't expect because the expectations, the assumptions you have throughout the process can determine your closing ratio. I want to read to you from one of my favorite books by Brian Tracy called The Art of Closing the Sale. I highly recommend it. It'll help you really in the way you think about your expectations and closing the sale. Here it goes. If you're completely fluent in closing and absolutely confident in your ability to ask for the order at the end of your presentation, you'll be more aggressive about prospecting in the first place. Let me pause here. Brian Tracy's basically saying if you get more confident in closing the sale, not that you close more sales, but if you get more confident in closing the sale, that creates an energy that causes you want to even prospect more. Think about this for a second. He also says you're going to have a higher self-esteem and a better self-image. Let me kick off this chapter and this training with this. Learning to close the sale has everything to do with your expectations in the process, but it causes you to feel better about yourself. It causes you to have a better self-image. This is why you can look at a calendar in any company and look at where pockets of growth are happening, and somebody there knows how to close the sale. So it's a big skill we want to learn. He also says you'll become more active each sales day. You'll even use your time better. You'll be a better time manager because you know that you can close the sale. You will feel like a winner most of the time. That's from Brian Tracy. As I read these words, as I think about this concept, I want to really impart to you as now you know university members that closing the sale is a simple process if we're thinking about it correctly and if we're using the other laws in this series the right way. The law of the first impression, the law of staying in control, the law of the takeaway, the law of the big rocks, and the law of expectations. If we're using the other laws, closing the sale is nothing more than dealing with and overcoming a few objections or answering questions. So let's jump right into it. I want to give you some beliefs about closing the sale. I'm going to repeat some things I've said in previous laws, but in a different context. But let's kick it off. Here we go. Number 1 is everybody's a sale. Doesn't mean they're going to join your team, doesn't mean they're going to join a business, but you have to assume, you have to expect that everyone is a sale. This is an attitude. By expecting that everyone's a sale, you're going to think about everything differently. And so I want to coach you on the fact that not everybody's going to be a sale, but the fact that you expect it changes everything. Expecting a sale means you're going to walk in with applications. You're going to walk in prepared. A lot of people don't. Hate that I have to say that, but if you don't have a stack of applications when you walk into the event, you're probably not going to close any sales because there's a way that you come across based on the expectation you have. You have to assume that they're going to sign. Let's talk about the second belief that I want to mention here, and that is the belief is that you are an interviewer and not a salesperson. I spoke about interviewing and the process in a previous chapter, but let me just kind of repeat a couple of things here. By becoming an interviewer and not a salesperson, you get the opportunity to never hear the word no. You get the opportunity to be the person that says no based on the interview. You've got to think about it this way. If you owned a successful company and you wanted to employ the best people, you would say no to everyone that you didn't want. You would say yes to the ones you want. If someone didn't return your call, you could leave a message on their machine saying, hey, this may not be right for you. How about we touch base later? But I'm going to go ahead and cross you off the list. This is the law of the takeaway. You get the opportunity to tell them no. And if you were sitting in an interview and you're talking with someone and they start complaining about the industry, they start complaining about the idea that nobody makes money, you know what? It's okay in your mind to say, this person is not somebody that's going to be right for this business. And go ahead and say to them, hey, listen, it sounds like this isn't right for you. And in that case, if you're saying no before they say no, they can't say no. Let me give you a few key questions to ask that'll help you maximize closing the sale. This is the law of expectations. This is really what closing the sale is all about. Number one, if you want to maximize this whole thing, let me give you a few ideas here. Number one, ask yourself this question. Does my prospect really want to be here listening? Or did I talk them into the meeting? Did I beg them into it? Did I sneak my way over to their house? Or are they really interested? A lot of that has to do with your posture and what you said earlier on. But you got to ask yourself that question, because if you're presenting to people constantly that don't want to hear what you have, your closing ratio is going to be lower. Has my prospect been presented with enough third-party testimonials? Meaning they've heard me present, they've heard me share, but have I documented the things that my company wants me to document? My guess is your system, whatever it is, the people that are succeeding with it are using information properly to point to something other than themselves. That's third-party testimonials, third-party documentation. You're probably hearing that taught by every leader that's trying to teach you your system. But if you want to know why some succeed and others fail, it's the implementation of this. Is my prospect the decision maker? We talked about this before. You're sitting with the spouse and they say to you, hey, I need to call my husband. I need to call my wife. Well, you know what? You've got to get better at figuring that out before you present rather than waiting until after you present. And just don't present if you're not in front of the decision maker. And can my prospect afford what I'm selling? You know, a lot of this can be dealt with on the front end instead of the back end. It can be dealt with expectations. It can be dealt with questions. Like, hey, John, if you liked what you saw and you really felt like it would work for you, do you feel like you can come up with a few $100s to get started? Most people are going to say no to that. Matter of fact, if they say, you know what, I don't know that I can come up with money. Let me tell you, it's probably a lie, but they probably just define themselves as someone that you may not want to be in business with anyway, because they're not ready to think about this as a real business. Doesn't mean they're bad people. Some people just, timing isn't right, and you can save yourself a lot of frustration if you begin to deal with the law of the expectations properly. The fourth one I want to mention to you is this. Here's what's interesting. It's hard for your prospect not to say yes. Meaning, if you really, in a short sense, want to know why people don't call you back, it's because they don't want to call you back. They don't want to say no. They don't like saying no. People don't like telling other people no. They want to say yes. So understand this. In your presenting, as you're presenting your opportunity, learn to incorporate yes statements into your presentation. You know, for example, as you're going through it, if you're talking about your product, you might say something like, John, doesn't that make sense that everyone should probably be taking something like this? Well, that's a yes statement. You're expecting him to say yes to that, which he probably will. And hey, John, doesn't it make sense that everybody should have another stream of income? Just a couple examples that I noticed through the years of working with people that were closing the sale better than I was, that they were getting their prospect to agree with them throughout the presentation, so that at the end, when they asked for the sale, it was really hard for the prospect not to agree. They'd already agreed 6 times. So if you want to know one of the secrets of closing the sale, it is incorporating yes statements. Last thing I'm going to tell you and remind you of is this. A major belief is that closing the sale is nothing more than overcoming objections. In an earlier video, I mentioned that the 4 things we do: build the list, contact the list, share your message or your presentation with the list, and answer questions. In that order. We don't overcome objections before the presentation, and usually answering questions is what overcomes the objection. We want to answer questions and overcome any objection after they've seen anything, and also during the presentation. I'm going to jump to the next part of this particular section. This may even be an independent video that we expand on in the future, but we're going to talk about the box, and it's going to help you close more sales.